World Wide Web.
That is John Liffen. He curated an exhibition about Tap 1 and Robeson's concert for London's Science Museum in 2016. And sorry I've had to fade out that beautiful voice, but we'll hear more of Robeson later. First, I need to tell you about this new cable that allowed people to hold audible conversations across the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. Cables were first laid under the Atlantic in the 1850s, but they could only transmit telegraph messages, which were like text messages that would be typed out and handed to somebody. The first time voices were carried across the Atlantic Ocean was in 1927, but it was far too expensive for most people to use. Plus, the sound quality was terrible. Yeah, I could barely hear a word of that too. The man speaking, the head of the British Post Office, was actually describing it as a perfect telephone service. Nevertheless, over the following decades, technological progress was driven by the Second World War, and in 1953, the British and Americans began work on a new cable, one where you could actually understand what the other person's saying.
The new technology that made Tap 1 so exceptional was the development of reliable undersea amplifiers or repeaters that could boost the telephone signal as it went all the way across the Atlantic, keeping it as clear at the far end as it had been at the start.
It seems bizarre, even now, to build a wire that sturdy, that long, to go right the way across the Atlantic. How are they actually laying them into the ocean bed?
The conducting wire was copper, and then you had layers of metal wrapped around it, and then a thick layer of pitch, tarry substance, coating the outside. So you've got 2,000 miles of cable wound into the hold of the cable laying ship, and then as the ship went along, the cable was pulled out of the cable hold, up over the stern, and it dropped down behind the ship, and so you went on.
It took the British and Americans a year to lay the Tap 1 cable on the ocean floor, and it opened for business immediately, with the first phone call made between London and New York on the 25th of September 1956.
Hello, Dr. Hill. This is Mr. McConaughey.
Well, how do you do, sir? It's no exaggeration to say that you sound as if you're speaking from somewhere in London. Yet you're 4,000 miles away as the circuit flies or swims.
Tap 1 sounded so good, we're even getting transatlantic jokes. And if you think that's clear, here's what Robeson sounded like on the same line.
Did my Lord deliver Daniel, and why not every man he delivered?
Now, while all this innovation was happening, Robeson was having a hard time in the USA. The son of an enslaved man, Robeson was a college American football star, a qualified barrister, a celebrated actor, and he was one of the most famous singers in the world. His songs railed against racial and economic oppression, and he was popular among left-wing activists.
Freedom shall be mine.
Do you remember the first time you heard Robeson, maybe on the radio or on a record?
First time I heard Paul Robeson was when I was quite young, because my parents had some records, some of his more committed political songs, such as Joe Hill, about the American trade union leader.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night.
By 1950, the Cold War rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union was escalating, and Robeson's left-wing views and powerful voice meant the authorities viewed him as a threat. They refused to renew his passport and stopped his songs from being distributed in America. He was effectively silenced.
I didn't die.
But what the US authorities didn't bank on was Robeson's huge popularity across the Atlantic. When Tap 1 hit the news, his supporters in Britain realised the new technology could be the key to setting Robeson's voice free. On the 26th of May, 1957, they did just that.
So they had the idea of holding a protest meeting in London and establishing this telephone link that could bring Robeson's voice into the town hall so that he would actually sing. And the great slogan for the meeting was, "Let Robeson sing."
The concert doesn't go ahead without a hitch though. Because the technology is so new, someone in the New York studio hasn't flicked the correct switch. So, whilst the audience can hear Robeson's voice, booming out of the speakers, the host on stage in London isn't able to speak back to him.
Paul? Hello? Hello, Paul? Can you hear me?
And the sound quality is so good, the audience are thinking, is it really Robeson singing live? Or just a recording? But thankfully, that wayward switch was eventually flicked.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, wonderful.
Will it come over all right?
Oh, I can't tell you.
That's wonderful.
Everybody in the hall, they just realised that he really is there and erupted into applause. It was a really thrilling moment. They shouted, "Can you sing Old Man River?" And he did, and kept the link going for a little bit longer.
How about singing Old Man River?
Just a second, so you got
We want it. We'll pay for it.
Old Man River, that old man river, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along.
Because of Tap 1, Paul Robeson could sing again, and that glorious deep voice still has resonance today in the way we all communicate. Nowadays, when I pick up the phone and make a call, how is that working in comparison to the method that was used before?
Almost certainly, your telephone call to anywhere in the world will go through an undersea cable. It won't be a metal cable, it will be a very thin strand of glass fibre, and it won't go as electronic pulses, it will go as flashes of light, incredibly fast. The result has been that the world has become festooned under the sea with networks of submarine cables. These undersea cables are the bedrock of the World Wide Web. It's all done by flashes of light.
No matter how green Paris is or isn't during the Olympics and after, there's still the issue of how millions of international visitors actually get to the City of Light, because transportation makes up by far the largest part of tourists' environmental footprint. Oh, and full disclosure, I returned to London on the Eurostar, but I did arrive by plane. And the fact is, air travel dominates transport emissions on our trips abroad. Aviation, scientists concur, has so far contributed to 3 to 4% of global warming, but that share may well grow as the number of tourists themselves inexorably rises. According to the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, airlines are projected to carry a record 4.7 billion passengers in 2024. And yet, the airline industry also says its members are committed to the target of achieving net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. Graham Miller is a professor of sustainable business at Nova School of Business and Economics in Lisbon. He's been studying the travel industry for decades and is critical about how it's responding to climate change. Professor Miller believes that aviation has until now come under a lot less scrutiny than other areas of the world economy, and even has an unfair advantage. Now, Graham, the Paris Agreement in 2016 was a key moment in cutting emissions. Did airlines